Right, welcome everyone. We're just going to ground ourselves into this meeting so that we're in the present, and whatever else might be happening just goes to one side for now. So just take yourself to your breathing. Know that we're here together to help and support lots of different people throughout the world even, but our focus is mainly on the United Kingdom and our local places and connecting with other people. So just take yourself to your heart centre and know that we are here to be grounded with the love and the love movement. So liberation, opportunity, vitality, empowerment. And we can have discussions that might not be allowed in some places, but because we can agree to disagree and we're going to be respectful in how we do discuss things, we're going to take it in turns to talk, but also if anyone wants to add anything at any point, please do. Ideally put the hand up with the technology, but otherwise if it doesn't seem to be working, put your own hand up. So you're here in this meeting and we'll just go with the flow. Okay, thank you. Right, so I know we've got some different faces here, so it's lovely to see you. So this is the Beacons meeting, and the Beacons is basically the love movement, as we now call it, the potential candidates, but also people to support those candidates. And so that's why we're here and we gather together on the online technology, which is wonderful because that's the only way that actually I know and I've ever met all of you. Thankfully, I've physically met up with some well, from all the love movement people, which is Rachel, Lynn and Roger. I've physically met them before, and I've seen Cliff before and we've had a little bit of contact between us, and now it's nice to meet you, Chris, and
you too, Julia. Thanks.
Lovely to have you here. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is I'm not going to update you on what's happening with me at the moment, but I will do when it feels right to. I'm going to go to Rachel first because she's on the top left-hand corner, and then I'll go round my sort of screen. So it'll be Cliff after Rachel, then it'll be Chris, then it'll be Lynn, and then Roger. Okay, so Rachel.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Thanks for hosting, and welcome to Chris and Cliff. And yeah, it does feel like we are kind of opening to a lot more different influences. I know you are, Julie, and it's really inspiring that we're kind of embracing lots of other possibilities without judgment. And so, yes, I'm really looking forward to hearing from Chris and Cliff because I know that you've both got exciting possibilities around creating the kind of structure that is needed, because we've always had this vision, and I do believe, I mean, the power of the imagination, this vision of the possibility, the very real potential for, with the next general election, for every single seat to be won by an independent. And in doing so, that would completely sweep away the political party system, which we know is corrupt and totally funded by big corporate. And I would include reform in that, I have to say. And of course, this has been one of our biggest challenges, that we haven't had the funds to be able to do those big campaigns like the East Midlands Mayor, and Piers Corbyn had problems with the London Mayor, and they wouldn't allow him to stand in the end, even though he did actually manage to get the deposit, and he took it to the High Court and they still wouldn't let him stand. So the levels of corruption are off the charts, and yeah, so it's down to us to find a way to support and rally all of the people who've had enough. Because, yeah, imagine that, 660 MPs, all independents, all representatives of the people, and we move to direct democracy, which I know Andrew Bridgen's been talking a lot about. So wouldn't that be an amazing vision to hold? So yeah, that's my little share.
Right. Thank you, Rachel. I'm just going to come in on that. And you mentioned Reform UK, and I know some very good councillors in Derbyshire, and I don't know where else they're from, that I've come into contact through Andrew Bridgen. And those people, honestly, they are so proactive, and they do call themselves independents.
Yeah, I do agree that the reform has swept up a lot of the kind of UKIPers and the non-WEFers, and I have a lot of respect for the people and people like Alan Graves. However, it's really clear that they're being bankrolled, because at the top of that you've got Nigel Farage and Richard Tice, and they were bankrolled through Brexit by Aaron Banks. Now he's an insurance entrepreneur. And this idea to kind of break the NHS, that guy would make a mint if we switch to the American system where you've got privatized hospitals and medical insurance. And so, you know, I'm always looking at it through like follow the money. So that I kind of get a little bit suspicious when I kind of ask, like, Alan, how are you funding this? The mayor, he said, well, Richard Tice. And I say to Edward Oakenfold, well, how are you funding this? Oh, yeah, I'm a friend of Richard Tice. So, anyway.
Thank you for that update. And I know when I've looked at Reform UK, as much as I've said what I have about the local councillors that I have met, and they are so genuine and they are so proactive in on the ground stuff. So stuff that doesn't even need money, but they give their time and energy to. But also I did look at Richard Tice, and because of that, Richard Tice and Lee Anderson, that they've just got on board. I went to a meeting that he was leading a couple of weekends ago, and it was just outside a local co-op in Derbyshire. And yes, he didn't know I was going to go, but the reason that I went was because of what I've seen of him before. And I'm also part of a Facebook group that I presume he knows about, that Lee Anderson doesn't speak for us. And I have been part of that Facebook group for about 2 years, even though I'm not one of his constituents, but it's the ward next to where Mansfield is, where I am. And so I went really because I hadn't met him physically in a political situation. And so I went there, and the delivery that he did just helped me to be confirmed that I am not supporting him. And he tried to accuse me of hijacking the meeting. If I'd have wanted to hijack the meeting, I could have done so easily from the start. I was respectful to him. He was not respectful to me. I waited until pretty much everybody else had finished speaking. Most people had gone off to sort delivery of his leaflets, and then I spoke to him. And the way he was so aggressive and so disrespectful to me that he just confirmed that I do not support him. And so it's a real shame that the Reform UK people are so seem so genuine. And I do support Alan Graves in the position he's doing for East Midlands Regional Mayor, because he's wanting to get in appointed, and then I think it's about 19 staff that are already in place. He wants to remove those interim staff and put his own people in that he can trust to not try and puppet him, and get a legal department and a legal approach to get rid of that position. And Rachel is just showing, and thankfully that leaflet is in his actual presentation is in the center of that leaflet, because when it came through my door and I opened it, it almost dropped open at him. And I'm really glad that I've met him. I know he seems a genuine person. I've met him and been at least 2 or 3 meetings that he's been at. So I'm going to go to Lynn, because I think she wants to do some input on there, and then I'll also mention the Workers' Party of Britain as well. Okay, Lynn.
So, yeah, I'm just making the point that while I'm also suspicious of Richard Tice and his friendship with Matt Hancock and his happiness to accept to railroad inalienable rights and everything, I agree with you on a lot of the candidates at grassroots level are really genuine. I've met them before, and the Yorkshire, so many parties actually. But I think what we have to make sure is that, you know, we came into this quite well. Most of us came to this sort of space when we realized, when the let's say the shift hit the fan in COVID, and some people were even already asking a lot of questions before that and had already decided that they wanted to be out the system and were already up leveling. But we've been on this for a little while now, and what we're finding is that while we've been in this space, we've been doing the energy work and all the rest of it, now people are joining us, and we have to be prepared. You know, we know their record, we know what they've done, like Andrew Bridgen and everything they voted for the initial lockdowns and things that we didn't like and we thought were evil and bad. But I honestly believe he's up leveled in a way that he would no longer consider that something that was remotely acceptable. You know, it's never all right to do that. So it's great to see everyone actually, that a lot of the population up leveling and starting to meet us here. We can be so used to being sort of the oddballs and separate and everything that we forget, we don't embrace it. We're like, oh, what are you doing? I remember what you did. And we sort of have to just recognize that people are up leveling actually quite rapidly. Some of them are gonna meet us very quickly on this plane, and probably up level faster than us after that, and we'll be the ones stuck here, still stuck here being in our hippie place. So yeah, I do think we've got a lot. It's a very different landscape to a couple of years
and this
ago.
is where
even a few months ago, it's a very different landscape.
Yeah.
So yes, we will be working together. We will be working with groups we've not usually considered. I mean, I'd written Reform Off, and yeah, here we are supporting Alan Graves, because I think he's genuinely got the same interests as us on this, at least this issue.
Yeah. And there is the saying that until you've walked somebody's path for their whole life, I would say, not just for 24 hours, you don't know why they've made the decisions that they've made. So we don't need to judge, but if we can support them to realise what we feel needs to be happening for genuine freedom and genuine unalienable rights. I mean, that's a word that it's such a strange word, isn't it? So just to update you, I've ended up, I didn't join Reform UK, I sussed them out, and Richard Tice I wasn't happy with. Nigel Farage, I don't really know. He's gone through certain things of having his bank, problems, but I'm still not, I don't know how much.
Come on, he just got too poor for Coutts. That's not exactly a common everyday problem, is it?
Right, well, yeah, I just, yeah. When I went on a Brexit gathering in those years, if I'd have known he was going to be there, I actually would not have gone. I got there. I'm really glad I went, because I connected with different local people to what I had done before, and I went on my own, and then I found out he was there. I'm like, oh, right, okay. And he did a bit of a presentation. I can't remember what he presented, but I know I was glad I'd seen his presentation with him as a real person and not just on TV. So I wasn't as, where is he? But I'm still, yeah. So now I'm actually the branch secretary now of the Nottinghamshire branch of the Workers' Party of Britain, which is George Galloway's national political party, as the sort of, he helped to set it up. There are certain things that I wouldn't word as he does, and different approaches. He seems a very strong character. I joined them only about 4 weeks ago, because what I'd seen I was happy enough with, and until you actually get to know these people and what's happening, and I know as the Love Party, we were trying to get recognised by the Electoral Commission. They kept giving us hoops to jump. We weren't really comfortable with having to jump those hoops, but we kept trying to do it. And then they finally said, well, we've got these other hoops you're going to have to jump, so you won't be able to be recognised until after the election last May 2023. So you'll all have to be independent. Now, my approach with independence is Mansfield Independent Forum is like another party. So I did not want to be independent because of that. And I do know one of my friends knows someone who deliberately did not vote for me because I was marked as independent, and they just assumed I'd be part of that forum. So now I'm Workers' Party branch secretary. I hadn't quite realised just I am overseeing the whole branch, okay? So it is taking quite a lot of time, but actually what I'm seeing so far, we are there for the people, and we don't have to totally comply with head office. We will put to head office our stance as to what is needed locally in Nottinghamshire, and we're not calling it Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. Nottingham is just part of Nottinghamshire, okay? And so I know some people might not agree with me even being in that party, but if you don't, please just get in touch with me, communicate with me, and because I'm finding out, and I am still a non-politician, and I really want to learn about this to help everybody. Okay, right, so I'm going to go to Cliff now, please. You'll need to, yeah.
I'll mute off. Yeah, it's interesting. We've been, Chris and I actually work together on Greater Britain. I don't want to stay on this subject too long because I think it's one we could actually literally spend the hour talking about. And reform is a very interesting, let's call it a dilemma, in so much that the people that seem to be standing for MP are people that have integrity and they're sincere and they're trying to do, and they want to do best by their community. And there seems to be a lot of people there who are doing that, but they are definitely being backed by a much larger. So you don't know what that's about, and so this is a dilemma Chris and I have been talking about quite a few times as to how many of those, or do we even allow reform to come onto the platform, which I'll talk about now. But we're going to start it off with the independents. So basically, since our last meeting, Chris and I, we sat down with a lady that we've been speaking to for quite a long time, and she's been very busy doing other things, and so we finally managed to sit down and have a conversation. She now has a platform, or we now have a platform, whereby every MP can centralise all of their information to all of their constituents. So they can hold their own Zoom calls without using Zoom. They can change their groups, so they can have groups of people who are followers and willing to do things, to hand out leaflets and such like, and communicate specifically with them. They can put their videos on there. They can use the URL specifically on their literature to drive all of their potential constituents to come and have a look at them, whereby they can see a profile with all their videos, what they think, their manifesto, etc., etc., etc. And then if they wish to communicate with the MP and get in touch and become part of his kind of constituent movement, they can join the platform. It's called Your Say. They can join the platform, and then they can join his group through that. Basically, they can actually go in there. So then they can have their own self-controlled ecosystem, in effect, that allows them to talk direct to all the constituents that are there. So they can drive them all into one place. They can write articles there and share them on every platform. We can host their videos for them on a Greater Britain YouTube channel, so that allows them to put all their videos on there. It just has everything. It's like a huge bells and whistles. It almost has too much, which is one of the things I'll be discussing about with Christine straight after this call, which is actually removing some of the facilities that are there, because it becomes potentially a little bit confusing for people, and they may not be necessary. Yeah, sorry, Julie.
Yeah, are these MPs the ones that are independents, or are they?
Yeah, initially we're gonna we've got a list of about 15. Was it 15 or 20, Chris? Independent.
The list is about 20 or 30 actually.
Yeah, so we've got those initially, and we've already spoken to quite a few of them. We've got people already saying they're interested in being on the platform, but it really centralizes all the communication points for them. They can literally put everything within that one space. So it allows them to completely, to send out information, to create events, to release videos, to to email, to have Zoom calls, to have specific Zoom calls with groups such as this, and then have bigger Zoom calls with, you know, all of their constituents. So it allows them to start to actually talk to everybody and anybody within their group. Now, why we were so interested in this, obviously, because, and it's a kind of a backstop, so I don't want to kind of labour on it too much because it's a kind of a defeatist attitude, but it is one that I'm always, you know, we always think about, I always look at the alternatives. If, let's say we don't get 650 MPs who are independent, and for me, my objective personally is actually just to disrupt the two-party system. That's my own personal objective. It's not necessarily to, it's just to pause the button. But that's my personal objective. It's not what Great Britain's about. It's about, that's my view. If we don't get to the point where that occurs, and so there isn't enough people listening, there isn't enough people awoken, and we don't get the kind of following that we want. The communities are still there, and the way we're looking at it is that anybody who wishes to back an independent will almost certainly be the mindset that pretty much everybody within this group has got already, which is to, you know, the way the world is currently going is not the way we want it to be. So we can in effect repurpose, although not, but it's still to the same directive, the messaging within there from one of political into one of community. So we'll already have the different communities in all the different areas, potentially, if we can get as many MPs in there as possible. And then we can start to help them to create communities and give them all the tools to really communicate with each other and actually start to continue building those communities so it doesn't just fall apart. So if Cliff's an independent MP, I don't get elected. Okay, fine. What can I do now? Well, you can continue, Cliff. You know, there's still a space for you to work with the people that you've got within you, in your community, and actually start to impact your community. So you can still have a, you know,
I'm assuming that the people that can contact those independent MPs don't have to be registered on the electoral roll, so that they can just live in the constituency. And
it's purely about it's purely a numbers game at the moment, which is to have multiple funnels coming in from the MPs, from the work we're doing, from other groups. So we're in contact with Direct Democracy. We've been talking to Neil for quite a while. We like the fact that he's interested in having a structure that allows for people to vote on different key aspects. So we like that structure. We think it's based on the Swiss voting structure.
It literally is. Anyone that lives in that constituency or works in that constituency is welcome to get involved with it.
Absolutely, 100%. So it's a complete feed. So that we're hoping that the MP will be feeding people into the Greater Britain, at which point they can join their group. We're going to be doing our work to be driving people into Greater Britain, at which point they can find their local MP and join their group. We're looking at connecting to multiple organisations, regardless whether it's the Workers' Party, the Freedom Movement, whoever it is, because there's bloody hundreds of them currently. I mean, that's the problem for us, is there's this huge split of people, when really what we need to do right now is actually come together, and we're calling it the gathering, because this is the time. And from my perspective, this is the moment of the gathering. This is the time where we are going to start to come together as a greater mass.
Yeah.
And the outcome we don't know yet, but that's okay. But the gathering needs to happen, basically.
If you thought you knew the outcome, then that would be when you.
Well, I've got my own thoughts about the outcome.
And we can all have our thoughts and use our imagination, like Rachel mentioned, in a grounded way. And we need to keep that positive vision and being with that focus of love rather than fear. And I don't know if it came up last time, but I'm in a movement, we could call it a Cooperatives UK movement with Simon, who's one of our other beacons. We've set up a limited company. I'm one of the directors, he is, and then we've got someone called Maureen on it. And it's about community projects. But I won't speak any more about that now, but we're getting
Well,
up.
no, that's really interesting, because there's other things that we're actually looking at trying to bolt within the platform, which is potentially actually putting a kind of a Just Giving type process within it, where people, so let's say I'm an MP and I need to raise £500 to print off another 1,000 leaflets or whatever. And I've got my people around me, and I can actually send that out and say, guys, I need 500 quid. I know I'm asking a lot, but can you all give me, you know, a tenner each or a fiver each or whatever, just to kind of print these leaflets and get them out there? Or they can create events from them and say, I'm going to be handing out leaflets in this area. Who can come and join me? So it really allows them to basically control all of the people who are following and kind of supporting in one space, and then use that space to send messages out to all platforms, and to have all platforms coming back into one space. So it's a beautiful mechanism. And when we discussed it, I mean, I was jumping up and down, because I was like, this is a game changer. This is exactly what we've needed as a mass, basically, to kind of come together and have these conversations.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of conversations that need to occur.
Yeah. And it is that recognition that, I mean, in Mansfield, we've got even the most deprived two estates that are fairly geographically close, but they've both got very different needs. Right, I'm going to go on to Chris now. And yeah, I've just realised that somebody that was supposed to be coming at 3 o'clock, I told her by mistake 1:30, but thankfully she's going to arrive just after 2 o'clock, so I'll have to go very promptly today. Right, Chris, your turn.
Yeah, I appreciate the invitation to come today. Thank you. One of the things I'm very much into at the moment is energy, and I believe that like energy attracts like energy. And that's one of the things I've noticed with politics, is that the independents aren't attracting like energy. They're attracting it from their local community, but they're not attracting it on a national basis. And that's one of the things that I'm, very keen to sort of bring together, and which is why, I got together with Cliff and we formed Greater Britain, or he formed Greater Britain. It's the feeling of isolation. It's the feeling of isolation.
I'm not taking full responsibility for it. We created Greater Britain, Chris, very much. Sorry.
It's a feeling of isolation I get. I mean, it may not be the case, but I feel that independent MPs have a sense of isolation, that they're up against a big party machine, and there's people in the community that will support them, but on a national basis, there's no one that will support them. So that's really the sort of the incentive that I had to get involved with this. My background, very, very briefly, is that I work with estate agents to build their profiles, to get them, attracting like-minded people, clients in their community. And one of the things I talk to them constantly about is that character is more important than competence, because people trust people based on their character to start with, not because of their competence. So I'm getting the estate agents to basically be transparent, and consequently to be somewhat vulnerable in terms of who they are, and to attract the right client as opposed to any client. And one of the things about estate agents is they are one step above politicians in terms of trust. And trust is a big thing for me. Most people will do business with people they trust. They will vote for people they trust. And because politicians and because estate agents have had such a bad track record, there is no trust in the political arena or in the estate agency, real estate sector. So those are the things that I work on a daily basis. And I'm excited to be involved with something political whereby I can help the politicians, the independent politicians, to connect with their community better by being transparent by focusing on their character. And I was talking to one one prospective candidate in Windsor, and he was talking to me about how he's a local councillor, and all the things he's been doing, and how they've gone from 50, majority of 50 Conservatives in Windsor down to about 5 over the course of the last 10 years. And he was talking about his ambition to become the candidate at the next election. And one of the things that he said that really struck home to me was, well, if someone comes along who's better qualified than me, I'll step aside. And it really, I was blown away. I had to pick myself off the floor. I thought, well, can you imagine Rishi Sunak or, Keir Starmer saying, well, if someone's better around, I'll step aside. And it's that character that people connect with. And the other thing about that is that, the brief short story that I've shared there, story is very memorable. And you remember stories from years and years ago. And that's really what, connects you to the people and to the character, the stories about them. And if you look at politicians now, they're forever talking about their policy. I'm going to do this. I believe in that. We're going to do this. Empty promises. They don't talk about their character. If you said to, Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer, what's your character? You wouldn't get an answer. They'd beat around the bush and tell it, all about their experience. So my sort of exciting ambition for this group is the same as Rachel, is to have 650 independent MPs in the country. And when I first talked to Cliff, it was my vision was to dismantle the party system, because I believe that as soon as you form a party, you're dead in the, well, you're not dead in the water, but you're effectively open to influence by outside interests. And some of the common complaints that we get is, oh, it's like, it'll be like herding cats. Well, it won't be like herding cats, because the independent MPs have to have a responsibility to their community. You're not herding cats because you don't want them all to agree. You want them to sort of put their opinion, and specifically the opinion of the community, into Parliament. And when it gets to Parliament, then it becomes a democratic vote. My constituents tell me to vote this way. That's how I'm voting. Not my Prime Minister tells me to vote this way. That's why I'm voting that way. So I'm in love with people's potential, and I see huge potential in independent MPs. The guy I've just mentioned, there's another guy in Huntingdon, Dr. Chan Abraham, who's a super guy. And you can see by looking at them and talking to them that their character is shining out. And if you look at an MP who is part of a political system, there's no soul there. It's basically the energy is gone, and they're just going through the motions. And that's really, hopefully how we can change things.
So thank you for that, Chris. And also, I do like your analogy to cats, because cats can be very independent and don't need to be as looked after as dogs. I do love dogs, but also they're a very different breed.
Yeah.
And when you think of the Aristocats film, I love that film. And we used to have a cat called Boots, and she was so independent. I mean, she was a sort of cat that was born in the local just in the local tree area. And so I can't remember what they call those cats, but I do like that analogy. And each person is different, and everybody needs something different. So one man's poisons, another man's what they need.
Yeah, I mean, I think the party system tries to get agreement, whereas we don't want agreement in Parliament. We actually want open debate. I mean, there is very rarely an honest, open debate in Parliament where everyone is entitled to say what they feel.
Well, but Chris, you're very honourable as I stab you in the back. And that's what I really, when we've got the Houses of Parliament as a tourist attraction, and we have proper theatre actors and actresses in there, future generations won't believe that we allowed them to behave as they did. Because I'm an ex-teacher from mainstream, but I wasn't in there for long. If we'd got children behaving like the politicians do, we would be telling them off, and not telling them off, we'd be teaching them better than that. Yeah. Right, anyway, I'm very aware that I know Lynn needs to go at a certain point. So is there anything else you needed to say, Chris?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you very much. And yeah, very inspiring from what you've said. And also the best leaders are those that people don't realise they're being led, but then they are respected, so that if and when a decision is being needed to be discussed or whatever, they'll look to the leaders, like someone like Cliff, from what you've just said of him setting up the Greater Britain. But also that leader will not enforce, but they will advise, and they'll have the character and the respectedness that people will honour. Yeah, thank you.
Julie, just on that, just quickly before Lynn jumps in, I think that's a really critical point, because I think this is where we're all seeing the problem, is that there's somebody at the top who is making critical decisions without any consideration for regardless of what anybody else is saying. They're just saying, well, we're actually going to be doing this, or we're going to be doing that, and everything has to follow, and that's the end of it. So
Well, I would say that quite often they're actually puppets and they don't realise they're being puppeted.
For sure, but for me, it's you can't, if you have somebody in that role, in that position where they can literally go against. I mean, you only go back to the Iraqi war situation where you had 2 million people marching saying, we don't want this war. This is an illegal war. We should not be having that. And then for it just be signed off, and we do it anyway. I mean, it's like you're sitting there going, well, how can one person have that right and that arrogance?
But this is where I know complementary therapist wise. So I'm a complementary therapist. One politician in one country got complementary therapies probably integrated into their whole country. One politician actually demonized them in a different country. So it only takes one person, and each of us is a one person. Okay. Now Rachel's just put a microphone off, but I am going to come to Lynn as soon as. Did you want to say something?
I was just going to say, can we hear from Roger?
All right, Roger next.
Before we hear from Roger,
okay,
can I just give Roger a round of applause for his Yorkshire for his York Centre loudspeaker event. Well done, Roger. Well done. And Rachel did a brilliant interview with Philly J. Lay. I highly recommend you watch it if you haven't done already. So thank you.
Yeah, life's been keeping me rather busy at the moment, so I've not watched as much as I might have done. Roger, then we'll go to you, and then we'll go to Lynn, because I know she needs to go back promptly. Okay.
Okay, well, I'm on my way out now. I've got to go to the hospital to have a checkup with my pacemaker. So, I'm kind of short of time. I just want to tell everybody the reason that I did the video was to encourage other people. It's easy enough. Anybody can do it. Anybody. They can buy a megaphone for 90 quid. They can go into their local shopping area and get their word out. We don't have to rely on electronic platforms or meeting rooms. Just one man.
So I think Roger's just frozen, but honestly, Roger, you are such a good role model for people. But even the way that you used your megaphone, and you were sitting on your mobility scooter, and the wording that you used was so respectful and so honourable for people to actually engage with. Yes, I'm really pleased. I did see that video. Right, anything else you want to say now, Roger, because you've unfrozen now?
Well, no, I'm just going out to my transport now. I have to go.
Right, okay. So I don't know if you're going to be able to take your phone with you and just leave it on, you know, if you switch your microphone off, and then you can stay on if that suits you.
Yeah, well, yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Anyway, thank you, Roger. Thank you for what you did this week.
Thanks, Roger.
Really good to see you out there.
Thank you for all what you're doing. Thank you.
Where's it
Bye-bye.
hosted, Julie?
Right,
Bye-bye.
yeah.
Where's the video hosted that Roger shot and Rachel? Where are they?
So I put it on Telegram. It's just a short clip, but I'm going to actually put it on Roger James on his Love Party page that we set up. He's asked me to, so I haven't done it yet, but I'll probably do it this afternoon quickly. I'll upload it to YouTube, and I'll embed it in his
And
webpage.
where can I go to watch these? I mean, have you sent me that and I've completely missed it and been.
But if you
Oh,
go
I'll
onto
send
the
it to you.
website, when she's put it onto the website, you know, our Vote Love website, you'll be able to access it through there. But you're
I'll
on
send
the
it to
meetings
you.
group
I'll send it
anyway,
to you,
so
Cliff.
Rachel will be able to let us know when she's put it onto the website.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
I'll do it after the call.
Yep, that's prompted her. Thank you very much, Rachel, as well. Okay, Lynn, we are going to come to you now.
I said what I needed to say, I think, when I just needed to say thank you to Roger, and I just wanted to hop in and just remind us that we are now a lot of people joining us from other parties that we perhaps weren't expecting to ally with in the past, and that's, you know, it's all good. It just means we have to be a little bit open to it and not too snotty like we were here first. So but no, I think it's great. I'm seeing it all over, that the conversations we're having now are so different. You know, when I talk about different methods, like for treating something like nicotine, which has always been, you know, was a complete no-go area at one time. People are listening. They're having very different conversations. They're not just going, oh no, conspiracy theory or this, or anti-vax that, or oh no, doctor says this. They are actually starting to listen and watch the videos you send them and look at the research. So it's really, I think, a very positive change.
Right.
So.
I'm going to go to Rachel now because she's put her hand up, so she probably wants to say something related. But also, Lynn, if you could tell Cliff and Chris a bit about the hemp approach with buildings and things like that, that might be another good little insight for them. So, Rachel.
What does Lynn want to do that, because she's about to go?
Well, I was just going to say that's probably I'm going to be going to a hemp festival soon. And the bloke there has actually built his house with hemp that he grew. So he's really done the end-to-end process. We've invested in a hemp company. We're looking to build our own house using their expertise and technique, and also we'd like to grow our own hemp. So yeah, I'm sort of at the learning stages, but I'm finding people that can help us. I think it's a great way to go. It's a great I mean, you know what, it even fits in with the bloody net zero agenda, because hemp is very carbon sequestering. So we can even virtue signal in a WEFI way about it. Which sort of grates on me a bit, but there we go. I suddenly find myself on the WEFI page. Anyway, so I'd love to do that, but that's sort of a bigger conversation, Julia, and I won't have time now, but I'd love to hear what Rachel says.
Yeah, so I don't know if Cliff and Chris know much about the hemp community. So I'm actually a grandma on a hemp international peace thing that started last year. I'm a UK grandma on it. I still don't understand much about it, but I do know that I was talking to my mum about it. So mum's 91 this year. And she was telling me that when she was a child, there used to be loads of fields that didn't need a license to grow hemp. And there was loads of hemp happening. And I also know that we could be filtering water much more healthily using hemp. We could be having clothes, we could have lots of textiles and things using hemp. So this is where, that's what my vision is, to have loads of hemp fields. Right, I'm going to go to Rachel now.
Which is why hemp was banned, because it's probably the most fastest growing, useful kind of plant that you can find. I mean, forget the smoking of it, but I mean the actual plant itself is the most, it's incredible what you can do with it, which is why they banned it. They don't want you to grow things that you can make your own clothes with. And
yeah, it totally competes with the oil industry. Totally.
Of course,
Yeah.
I mean, they don't want any of that to be happening. And it's, you know, it's healthy, it's everything, it's an everything plant. So yeah, I looked at that a while ago.
And it helps us smile, and smiling actually releases the happy hormones and makes us feel better, even if we do a fake smile. So yeah, right, Rachel.
Yeah, so just on that point, this is really key to asserting our lawful rights. I won't even say common law rights, our lawful rights as owners of land, provided we're causing no harm, injury, or loss, to do what we wish with that land. We are the authorities over our land, and that's very much what we're doing at Crestbrook Dale, is standing up to this idea that an authority that is supposed to be public servants can come in and basically tell you what you can do with your own land or bulldoze it or whatever. So I feel very strongly that this reclamation of our lawful rights is really important. So I just wanted to say that in response to the hemp thing about being banned. Like, how dare anyone try to ban a plant, nature, that's useful? So yeah, that's a bit of a hobby horse for me.
And not only useful, but it also is much better at insulating our buildings. And that's what is being not allowed. And the house that I moved into nearly 2 years ago now, if it had been covered with the hemp stuff, it would be well insulated, whereas it's brick and it's absolutely useless. So
Well, big corporations, they want to sell you their stuff. It's the same with Big Pharma. They don't want homeopathy and natural therapies, do they? And plant medicines. They want to sell you their Big Pharma shit. So it all comes down to money. But the thing I was going to say about reform, just to go back to that, because I don't want to appear that I'm criticizing reform. And in fact, I just noticed the video that I did, the interviews with Philip Rose, who's the reform councillor on Derby Council, and obviously Alan Graves, who's the Derby mayor, also standing for East Midlands mayor. That's had 41,000 views now. And if you look at the comments on it, it's a very strong comment stream. But the thing about reform is that a lot of the reform, because reform is like an umbrella of independence, so they don't have a whip, which is really important. But a lot of the reform people realise that is their Achilles heel. And a lot of them don't like Farage and Tice. When we went to that meeting, they were all aligned to that. And so reform is a bit of a Marmite party, because a lot of people are saying we just need to get the Tories out or Labour out. But equally, there's a lot of people saying, oh, bye, Lynn. Sorry to dominate this a bit, but there's a lot of people who are saying that they won't vote for reform because of the connection with Farage, Tice and UKIP and all of that. So reform is a bit of a double-edged sword. And yeah, I don't want to appear that I'm dissing it.
I was absolutely amazed at how someone I know very well, as soon as I just remembered, mentioned Reform UK, I'm racist and all this. Look, there's some, I didn't even know about Reform UK properly. Yes, I'd heard the name, but I hadn't looked into them because I'm a non-political person. I said, I am looking into them. And then, so please tell me what you think of them. But also, I do know that I've met these genuine people that have been really supporting their local community. And I happened to be in Hena, and someone was telling me just spontaneously how wonderful her councillor was, this Alex Stevenson, who I've actually met. And then I said, oh, well, is that Alex? And then I realised it was the guy that I've actually met and had significant conversations with and been at 2 or 3 meetings with. And she was telling me how good he was and how proactive he was on the ground level. And so I'm really pleased that I've known that side, but also I'm glad that I hadn't got the impression that certain people have been giving me. And I'm like, well, just because that's what some of them are like Richard Tice, I don't particularly want to do things that he's doing. I still don't know where I am on Nigel Farage, but yeah, and definitely Lee Anderson. Yeah, but he's been Labour, Conservative. What's he going to do next? So anyway, anybody else? Because we're on 10 to 2 now.
I just want to say it's such a small world, because I actually just redesigned Alex's leaflet for Neil through Direct Democracy, and redesigned it and rewrote it and put it all back together again and sent it over to them. So they're printing. So it just shows what a small connected world this is, and how big it is, and yet how small it is. It's just funny when you mentioned it. I was like, no way, man. That's just so yeah.
And this is where my approach is: you've got to carry a tray whoever is with you. And if you think of what unfortunately happened to Piers Corbyn when someone was trying to set him up to take some money, he was being set up. So I know that the different roles I've taken through my life, and particularly with teaching controlled remote viewing as well. So I don't know if you know anything about that. But I know that, and the local council definitely know me because of me saving Berry Hill Park, just through setting a Facebook group up. I didn't know what I was doing, but I've gotten there are nearly 4,000 people on that group now, and we have saved that park, and it is being regenerated, not just through me, but if I hadn't have set that Facebook group up, within 4 days we wouldn't have had 400 people that somebody else prompted to have a protest gathering. And so through that, in 2018, we managed to save that park. And so each of us has got a different role, and we need to respect each one as individuals, but also as we're coming together and supporting each other. And just knowing, sometimes a person just having a smile can save their life, literally. Just being able to offload how they're feeling can literally help them cope with what they're coping with. And now I'm working with 2 of the different communities in Mansfield every single week that are very deprived estates, but I am learning so much about their lives and things that they should not be having to go through. And things like not being able to keep the heating on, and then they end up with mold and things, and then they've got the ongoing health problems because of that, but then also they've got the council having to go in to fix the mold stuff because it's a council property, etc., etc. You could not write it. You would not want to write it, the stories that they've got
in this great country.
I heard a quote this morning, which was, we can find the money to kill each other, but we can't find the money to save each other. Which is, the homeless and, the people who need the help. We can't find the money for them, but we can find it to kill each other.
And this is where, when they want to print money, they just do. I also, fortunately, used to work for the banking industry. I worked for Barclays Bank when I left school, and I even did Institute of Banking exams. I then went into the Coal Board, and I ended up doing Institute of Personnel Management. And I've learned loads through that, and the deep mine staff and people, and I used to even talk to the coal miners down the pit when they were needing to order emergency equipment. I've learned a lot through that, and the deep mines I've got much more respect for than I had the Opencast executive. They were much more like the Barclays people, and too far up their own backsides in my way of expressing it. Right, Rachel, we're just about to finish on because we're on 5 to 2. So Rachel.
Yeah, trying to get a word in edgeways again. No, I just wanted to mention the whole thing that's going on in the US, which I only kind of was aware of a couple of days ago, about all of the students in the universities, and obviously this 95 billion bill of support for Ukraine and war, and then all of the students doing these encampments, and then basically they're sending the troops, and it's absolutely shocking what is happening. And it's like COVID all over again, with just the most outrageous scenes. It's just like, so it's like the system is showing its face of just how brutal and ruthless and a complete disregard for people's rights. And that's in America, where their rights, their constitution is a written one, which very specifically defends the rights of the people. And the people own the universities. They're not owned by big corporations or the government. The universities are owned by the people, so they don't have a right to say this is private property, you're not allowed to protest on it. I mean, it's absolutely, and I think that these kind of things have to be flushed out so that the world can see the corruption and the heavy-handedness, because that's what's coming our way.
Yeah, it's not only what people are taught. I mean, from nursery age and upwards, it is totally wrong how we teach and what we're teaching. but also even for the people that are doing PhDs, so towards doctorship and things, they can't get funding for things that aren't approved by certain people. And this is totally wrong. And so they are overly complying with the view that the powers that be that are puppeting them are allowing to come through, and that should not be happening.
Well, they're all funded, aren't they, by big corporations like Bill and Melinda Gates Corporation. We saw that with Imperial College and Johns Hopkins and all the bullshit that they pumped out to support COVID. I mean, it's all big corporate funded. Again, follow the money. This is the big challenge and problem. And like Marianne Williamson just can't make a dent in US politics because she's just completely blacked out from all media.
Yeah, I think the collective voice basically isn't heard because, you know, MSN owns the media. It's basically influenced by the governments and by the elite. So it's got to be a grassroots level that forms their own platform and spreads the word on their own platform as opposed to being on another platform.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, with estate agents, I always talk about, you know, do a podcast, do a blog, do a video, do a digital and a printed magazine, get your own voice out at grassroots level and get a groundswell movement, as opposed to relying on social media, on Facebook and Twitter and so on, and actually get that message out there, because people will connect with that message if they hear it. But the problem is people aren't hearing the message.
But this is wonderful because the Chrysalis group of cooperatives that we're doing, that's exactly the sort of stuff we're promoting. And so I'm sure we can connect together on that as well. So you probably don't know that I did 3 modules with King's College London in 2017-18 on public health. I was the only non-public health student. The rest of them were global, but all employed by public health. And they would not allow me to even mention complementary therapies. So I had one of my assignments referred that I had to resubmit because of my inclusion of things about complementary therapies that haven't got randomized controlled trials that they call gold standard, and they are not gold standard. And this should not be happening. And the reason that they haven't got any proper research, if we call it that, into complementary therapies is because basically they have demonized them since 2017. And I've been a patient and public voice locally and nationally since 2010 with the NHS. And I've even done NHS England patient and public engagement training. And I was really optimistic in 2016. I've even interviewed with the Chief of Staff of NHS England. I didn't realise it was that when I started interviewing. So I was on the interview panel just with him. And then one of the interviewees, about the 5th one, said something about him being Chief of Staff. And I sort of did a bit of a double take, like, oh, what have I been saying about NHS England? And I thought, no, whatever I've said is true, because I do only voice myself honestly and respectfully enough. But if I'd have known he was Chief of Staff, I might not have given my opinion quite as much. So I'm really glad that I didn't know. So, but anyway, I've got a wealth of experiences that I've had. Right, I'm very mindful it is now to. Anyone else wants? Well, we'll stop the recording once we know nobody wants to say anything else. But just stay on if you would after we stop the recording.
Very quick on that. I think that it's very interesting. The whole thing's kind of come full circle for me as a conversation that we're talking about. We started talking about reform at the very beginning, and what we've got currently is a lot of people who can see that it's too expensive for them to stand as an independent on their own with their own right, and so therefore they're moving to a party that maybe they don't completely understand or believe or trust or whatever the things are. But I've done so because there's the finance there for them to actually get out there and start do something for their community. So it's a very, very, very interesting kind of dilemma. I think from this conversation only, I think we'll from Greater Britain we'll look very carefully at the reform people, but I think that the decision's going to be whether they actually have integrity and they are, you know, the people that we've been talking about, that you've spoken about. You obviously know them to the point where you
And
know that
also, Workers' Party of Britain, reach out to them, Cliff, as well, if you could. There do seem some good people in there. There's some that I don't necessarily agree with. George Galloway's Workers' Party of Britain.
Yeah. What about, just imagine that if we could raise like a treasure chest of monies to support independence, that would have the same effect. You know, if we could find a way to harness that energy, even if everyone just puts in a fiver, like if you've got a pot of like £1 million to fund basics, then that would really incentivize people to stand and to join the platform. So I do feel, I know you don't like the money aspect of things, Cliff, but I personally feel that would open the floodgates for people.
And that's why I'm so glad that Rachel came to some of the meetings that I was at as well, and met Alan Graves, because I needed somebody else there to know, and I felt I was there for her as well, so that we could have discussion about what had been discussed at those meetings, but also then you can sort out better where you feel you really are with it. Whereas sometimes you can leave the meeting and you might not have heard it with the same way that somebody else has. And that's what's been really good for us. And it's really amazes me that the three of us are in the centre of England and in the Midlands. So we've got Rachel at Bakewell, Lynn at sort of near Melton Mowbray, and me at Mansfield in Nottinghamshire. And so that, to me, we're resonating out and helping support all of this.
it is in
The
Solihull.
heart of England, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The heart of England, like he's okay. But I'm from Birmingham originally, but I'm obviously down in, I say up in London, down in London. But yeah, I just think it's great. I think there's a whole way of kind of there's a whole set of things happening right now that are from a spiritual and a economic and a gathering of people, and there's a momentum gathering now, and I think actually what Lynn said at the beginning, which is accepting people for who they are to reach the greater goal. You know, even if you look at a very simple instance where you had a load of people that took the jab, then got ill, and now would never take the jab. So within that short space of time, they've gone from advocates to complete non-advocates. You know, so now I know that something terrible's happened to them, which has made them suddenly wake up and go, "Oh, bloody hell, I screwed up there." But it has occurred, and I think those things are happening daily now. I think people are starting to see all the things.
Loved ones dropping dead. We've had a lot of people come to our stand in the park that was what converted them tragically. Yeah. Like their mum had it and dropped dead, or their wife had it and had a stroke or a blood clot, and it's tragic, but it's like been tough.
And this is where Andrew Bridgen came from, because he was sort of doing the whip thing initially and thought he was doing the right thing, but then had a severe reaction that he's still suffering from the second jab that he had. So our love movement is very much, we've acknowledged that we need to sort of be in there enough, but not give our soul away to help bring that system down. But also we are importantly bringing a new system to the fore, and connecting with people like you has been wonderful. I'm very mindful of, I will have someone arriving on my drive very soon. So if you could stop the recording now, and thank you everybody for listening to this, and thank you for all the people that be here.
And thanks Cliff and Chris for coming along, and thanks Julie for hosting. I'll stop the recording.
Thanks for